I will call the WSESD board meeting to order at 6:04. Good evening, everyone. The meeting of the WSESD will come to order. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means that some or all of the public body is meeting remotely, and some are meeting physically in a previously noticed location. The public may attend to observe, listen, and participate contemporaneously. Please note that while we will strive to provide means for those attending remotely to participate in the public comment period, there may be technical difficulties or reasons that otherwise prevent or interrupt remote public participation. Therefore, it is important to note that the open meeting law only ensures the public's right to participate and comment at a public meeting by attending at the designated physical location as posted in the notice and agenda. If a member of the public or of the public body has technical difficulties accessing this meeting remotely, please alert us by email. In the event of a technical difficulty that cannot be resolved, we may continue the meeting if necessary to time and place certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote in accordance with the law. So we will start off with student matters. We will give 5 to 10 minutes, and we will see if there are any students who would like to speak.
Should I go up there? Can I just talk here?
You would do whatever feels comfortable.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Django Grace. I know a couple of people here. Tim, I spoke with Tim the other day. I just wanted to kind of bring a conversation back into the limelight that has been brought up previously. And I think it's prevalent that we need to bring it back up after COVID has kind of taken the air out of it. And I would just like to start with alerting the board that Natowich Field is still, it is not in a condition that is fun, or I would say even safe to play on at the time. And I know you guys have a lot on your plates right now, but I think it would be really important to bring that conversation up. Once I have a couple ideas on what that would look like. That I totally understand that there's a lot of other pressing issues. I had thought of meetings, just getting people in the room together to start talking about it. And I don't want this to turn back into the thing like turf versus anti-turf, which it was before, because I just saw a lot of animosity be created in the community, and people just got really angry. And I was at the board meeting maybe 3 years ago, and I just remember people yelling, and I don't want it to look like that again. I want it to be a constructive conversation that we have in our community, and with the board. And one thing that I noticed is everyone has different facts. You know, everyone hears different things about this issue on the environmental side of it, on the injury side of it, on the economic side of it, even within, yeah. So I think it would be really beneficial to get all the big players involved with this conversation simply in a room together and just to talk about it. Maybe we need a mediator. Maybe we simply need all the facts to be straight, and we need it to be less of an opinionated thing. And we have a student athletic leadership council, which I'm on, and I think they need to be involved in the conversation. And I think we need the facilities people to be involved with the conversation, and environmentalists and board members, and Chris Sawyer, our athletic, what's his title? That guy, and anybody else who wants to be involved. I think it's important that this comes back up. So thank you, and I hope you guys consider bringing it back up.
Thank you very much.
There you go.
Any other students here, or?
Can I comment on his comment?
Sure.
Thank you, Django, for presenting that so well. I think from years ago, something that we all agree on, we have agreed for years, is that Natowich Field needs fixing. It's the status quo is unacceptable. So thank you for resurrecting that important issue. So well.
So we will move to any other students here or online who would like to speak. Okay. It sounds like David Scholes has his hand up, so I'm going to just ask one more time if there are any students who would like to speak before I allow David to speak. Okay, David, do you have something to say?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I was wondering if we could get a report from the Student Advisory Committee. I know they met again this week and had an interesting proposal around professional development, and I would love if they could share some of that with the board.
Oh, God.
Well, if someone is prepared for that, if not, then we could certainly do it at the next meeting. I don't want to put anybody on the spot if they are readily prepared for it.
I think I can speak to that.
Okay, great.
As we proposed at the last two board meetings ago, our professional development, we've been working with administrators about what that looks like and creating a plan for that. And we're still working out the details. So I think that's the update is we're in the midst of making it happen.
I'll just add, Ben emailed me today and I don't know that I've yet responded. It's been a busy day. But with an incredible proposal for how we use some of our March PD days around like student-led PD, following some trainings they've had, and I'm excited to move in that direction and do that. I think it's important.
Wonderful. So unless there are any other students who are looking to speak, we will move on to the consent agenda. Okay, moving on to the clerk's report. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 20th, 2022?
So moved. This is Ann.
Thank you, Ann, and thank you, Sean. All those in favor of approving the minutes from December 2022, December 20th, 2022, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to finances. Is there a motion to approve the warrants of December 12, 2022 in the amount of $1,232,057.73, December 19, 2022 in the amount of $135,231.95, December 27, 2022 in the amount of $138,985.13, January 3rd, 2023 in the amount of $297,935.44, and the payrolls of December 16, 2022 in the amount of $1,616,074.46, and December 30th, 2022 in the amount of $1,330,658.59. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. It's Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Deborah. All those in favor of, or is there a discussion? All those in favor of approving the warrants and payrolls as described, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, moving on to public comment on non-agenda items. We will spend 10 minutes on this. Anyone making a comment can expect a response that falls into one of the following categories. Receive an acknowledgement of the comment with no further action planned. Receive an immediate response by the board chair or administration. Administration would be directed to contact and respond to the person. Clarification sought from the administration for a specified meeting. The topic would be added to a specified future board agenda. The matter would be referred to an executive session. A public hearing would be held on the matter. Do we have anyone in the public who would like to comment? Jody.
Good evening, Jody Normandeau from Dummerston. Thank you for getting rid of the echo. I had just put my hand up to see if you realized it because I couldn't hear what was going on. Next, I would like to say that it is really heartwarming and great to see that the students feel comfortable to speak and ask for things and speak their minds. And I think the board listens, and I think that's great. The other issue I have is your webpage. I am still not getting anything that I can use on my iPad. And then even tonight to get to the meeting on my computer, I had difficulties. So I don't know how, maybe someone can tell me where they're at in this. I would love to get it fixed and be able to find things easy. I was not able to find the leadership councils when I was looking for them. And you know, I really wish they were just a big bold thing on the top, but I don't even have any bold things on the top of my iPad. So I just want to pass that on. Please, let's get a good one rolling here.
Jody, what I would suggest is that you send something to me and or Carrie Amadon. Okay.
Jody and I have, I'll tell her, I'll call her.
Carrie said she would call you, but I would welcome you or anyone in the community or administration, if anyone has any particular things that it sounds like there's some frustration. There are some bugs to be worked out, understandable with something new. But if there are particular things that you're looking for or things that you see that you think, or things that you, excuse me, that might be helpful to address, having them in writing is sometimes helpful to make sure you can tick off all the boxes. So again, I'm sure that Paul, I don't want to speak for Paul, maybe he, okay. I'm sure Paul would welcome any emails, but you could certainly send things to Carrie or me. And it sounds like Carrie is going to be in contact with you as well.
Okay, I did send something in writing a month or so ago to the board and to Paul and to everybody. So I will write it up also, but I'm just bringing it up again. It's frustrating. I'm not great with technology, so.
I know that's in the works, and if I have something that hasn't been sent to Carrie, I will make sure to do so as well.
Thank you very much.
And I'll say that, this is Paul, I'll say that the website is changing on a not quite daily basis, but on a pretty frequent basis as we get to that punch list, so we can get through those items.
Thank you, Paul.
You bet.
Thank you, Jody, for your comments. Anyone else in the public comment? Okay, I'm going to ask one more time. Anyone who would like to make a comment during the public comment period? Okay, moving on to the unfinished business. Sexual abuse investigation. I do not have anything at the moment. I don't know if the administration of. Okay. Okay. So then we will move on to.
I have my hand raised.
Oh, sorry, Mindy.
Hi. May I speak? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Hi. Thank you. I missed a meeting for once. I had COVID, so
Oh,
I hope
I
you're
hope
feeling
you
better.
all are well. I am. So I have a question, but I'm going to start with a little preamble and read a relevant Vermont statute. And then I have a question for Mark Spino to follow that. So the first thing I want to say is that, of course, we know that one of the really important pieces of follow through on this abuse investigation and a piece of the accountability is communication and cooperation with the Agency of Education's licensure board to make sure that any educators who are found to have engaged in concerning or unprofessional behavior, that it gets reported to the Agency of Education. They have their own investigative process and their own review process. They have a panel of appointed Vermont educators who review any reported unprofessional conduct and decide whether the licensee should be subject to either some kind of corrective action or to losing their license, asked to surrender their license. And that happens at the state level. It's not dependent on the processes that the board is engaging in right now. And I'm going to cite VSA 16 VSA 1699, just a part of it, which it's reports of alleged unprofessional conduct or incompetence. And the relevant part is that a superintendent who has reasonable cause to believe a licensee has engaged in unprofessional conduct or is incompetent shall submit a written report to the secretary concerning allegations of unprofessional conduct or incompetence about a licensee. So it's the superintendent's obligation to submit that. Now, my understanding, having communicated a bit with the Agency of Education, is that they do sometimes allow a bit of time for an internal personnel review, sort of lower level personnel review within the school. But of course, by the time somebody has been fired, for example, we would assume that that personnel investigation has concluded. So my question for Mark Spino is, have you been working with and reporting to the Agency of Education's licensure review board and investigator in a timely way, as is your obligation per Vermont statute?
Yes, I have, Mindy.
Okay. I will just say that I have reason to feel some concern that the timeliness has somehow been compromised, that it maybe hasn't been happening within the usual or expected timeframes. And although the board is not answerable to the Agency of Education's licensure review panel, the superintendent is. So I just hope that you will be aware of that. Thank you.
I am aware and I am aligned with the AOE in terms of reporting.
Thank you, Mark. Minnie, do you have any other questions or?
That is my biggest concern, because obviously if we allow an educator who has been credibly found to have either behaved unprofessionally or in some way that is not competent or not appropriate to the code of ethics for Vermont educators, if they are simply dismissed or allowed to leave, then they can move along and just get another position in a different school or a different district. And that would be very concerning. That's obviously not, I'm concerned about all kids. So thank you.
So I can assure you, Mindy, that I am aware of that and reports have been made to the AOE and I have spoken with the investigator on numerous things.
Thank you, Mindy, for that
Thank you.
reminder. So it's always good to have reminders, and thank you, Mark, for your part on this. It sounds like David maybe has a question.
Yeah, along the same lines. Has the investigator received any additional support for her work? Has anyone followed up with Anison Goddard on the request for more support to help expedite help complete the interviews and the research that she's doing?
I don't know whether, I don't believe so, but I will follow up on that to see if that's something that is, I don't know whether that's something that is impeding anything or if it's being impeded at all, but I will certainly follow up on that question.
I think it's fair to say that the investigator hasn't reached out and asked for more support that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah, that I wasn't, the suggestion was that the board offer it. There's concern about the amount of time that it was taking, and if more people would help, then it's worth trying, and that the board offer it rather than ask her to reach out. But I'll just wait to hear what you find out, Kelly. The other question, and I know you folks are under a lot of stress all the time about this, and I don't want to continue to add to it, and I know very well the board has been advised many times of the harm being experienced by many of the persons who've come forward to report being abused as children in our schools. And I'm wondering if the board would consider asking Attorney Hakes and Attorney Goddard, Investigator Goddard, to articulate to the board the argument for continuing to release no information on the findings. It would be helpful to the board, I think, and whatever extent the information might be shared would be helpful to the community to just have some sort of an understanding of why there aren't things that could be released and if other things need to be further investigated. But having no understanding at all about it, it contributes to the ongoing pain and harm that these people are experiencing, and also makes the board subject to a lot of speculation and rumor mongering, and we all know where that goes. So I just think it might be, if people could understand what's at risk if some or much of what's been reported were made public, I think it would be helpful to everyone.
Okay, thank you, David. Mindy, you had something else?
I just wanted to add, in case I didn't say it earlier, that the licensure review is not in any way dependent on Attorney Goddard's investigation or any of the processes that the board is undertaking related to the sexual abuse investigation. They don't have to wait for any of the statutes that guide firing and appeals and that sort of thing. It's not dependent on that at all, from what I understand. And I do hope that the board is going to adhere to its commitment to release the findings when they receive the report from Attorney Goddard. But I do agree that releasing any corroborated reports along the way, as I've said before, would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who has anything Questions or comments on sexual abuse investigation update? Yes.
Is there any sense of the timeline that we can speak to now? For releasing any information or?
I don't really have, no, I don't, unfortunately, no. But thank you for asking the question. Is there anyone else before we move on?
I may ask the superintendent, how's the outreach going? The effort to extend the outreach
The outreach of the sexual.
of the investigation, particularly to the high school and BAMS.
I think it's going very well. We've reported numerous times, steps that we've taken, conversations that we've had with our students, proactive approaches we've taken as a staff to provide support and avenues for conversations. I think that work is ongoing. We spent, I forget when it was, maybe a month ago, we had a presentation dedicated to outreach and steps that we've taken, which is on our website under the documents section of the school district board page for reference. I feel we've taken a very thorough approach to professional development, avenues for conversations, wanting to meet the needs of our students, whatever those needs are. And we'll continue to be reflective and continue to move forward with the work that we're doing. I don't think it ever ends, Tim.
No, it doesn't.
Answer that. Yeah.
Thanks.
But sometimes it's good in order to ask the question, you have to ask the question to get the
Sure.
answer. So thank you to both of you. So I guess we will move on to policy review, to the Policy and Amendment Committee.
All right, there's several items. The first policy is F38, Prevention of Sexual Harassment as prohibited by Title IX. This policy was originally presented for first reading as of December 13, 2022. There has been no objection to date during this 10-day plus warning period. There have been no changes to the policy. I move that the WSESD School Board approve for readoption F38, Prevention of Sexual Harassment as prohibited by Title IX.
Second.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Liz. Is there any discussion?
Can I just add that there have been no changes to the policy? This is very legal. We went through this in great detail. Kate Margaitis was at a meeting chatting with us, and she certainly talked to the entire board at a recent meeting.
Is the policy just don't sexually assault people or?
It's much more involved than that. It runs 22 pages, this particular one. And I think that's a good approach. Don't assault anybody. Don't sexually harass anyone. But the policy also delineates what the procedures are if a report is made, and that's the 22 pages worth. Kate Margaitis is the Title IX coordinator for the entire district.
Thank you.
Dingle, I have all the policies in my office if you ever want to pop in.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Oh, I was just sharing. I have all the policies in the policy book in my office if Django's ever interested.
Oh,
in
yeah.
coming and looking.
And as well, it's on the website. WSESD drop down, and then you'll see policy, and it's right there. It makes for good reading.
I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
Deborah, do you know if this changes any, like, the current ways that students know how to go about reporting things or moving forward?
Doesn't change a thing.
Okay.
Doesn't change a thing.
Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of readoption of F38, Prevention of Sexual Harassment as prohibited by Title IX, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
Just a quick response to Ben. I think, Ben, what you were referring to is procedure over policy. And procedure is something we're always reflecting on and thinking about, how can we do this better?
And so getting to the issue of procedure, perhaps addressing some of the questions that have come up. The second policy this evening is presented for a second reading. The first reading was originally November 22, 2022. So it's being presented for a second reading, a 10-day warning period, and it is F10, reporting suspected child abuse or neglect. And you'll see some changes to this policy. On the second page, the change that has occurred is that the mandated reporter now must report directly to DCF, Department of Children and Families, as against the way it was originally worded, that the mandated reporter reports to the principal, the superintendent. So now the mandated reporter must make that phone call to DCF, as well as reporting to the building superintendent and or designated employee and the superintendent. So it's a three-pronged approach for the mandated reporter. If the mandated, and again, this is in red on the second page, so this is the addition. If the mandated reporter has questions, there are designated employees to seek out for advice. And again, this is a change. There is now an appendix with all of the designated employees listed. So those are the changes to F10 in terms of reporting suspected child abuse or neglect. And I think that goes directly to the questions that were just asked. So that's F10 being presented for a second reading. The other policy that is being presented for a second reading is F21, which is policy on the use of restraint and seclusion. And we met with Tate Erickson regarding this policy to help put together something that presents this particular district's approach to seclusion and restraint. So there is an opening statement in red establishing that restraint and seclusion are used as a last resort and only as a last resort. In addition, on the second page at the bottom, the definition for seclusion, which is 2.12 in this document, has been expanded to include the fact that seclusion may only be used when the student is visually monitored at all times by an adult. So in effect, that student is never alone. So those are changes to the policy on the use of restraint and seclusion. Again, a second reading, 10-day warning period. So any concerns about these two policies presented for a second reading, please email me directly. Yes. So I also have two other points to make.
Okay.
Should I continue or?
Are they?
Yes, question.
Just a moment, Michelle. Are they in regards to new points or are
New
they in
points,
regard?
new
Okay,
points.
so we'll take the question from Michelle. Michelle?
Yeah, thanks. I didn't want to get too far ahead, but I'm just reflecting a little bit on the reporting suspected child abuse or neglect. And also kind of tying in some of the feedback we just heard from Mindy about, the reporting of when it's an incident of an employee to the AOE. And I'm actually, a lot of our policies create a check and balance where the superintendent then reports back to the board. And so that we're sort of aware of those types of reports being made. And I don't know if it's something, if there's a place for that in this policy or if it's covered in another policy. I apologize if maybe that's the case, but I'm wondering about sort of that check and balance of, knowing, how do we, and I don't doubt Mark, I don't mean to sound like that. Actually, completely, I'm sure that he's on top of his responsibilities, but as a board member, I feel like I should know how we can be assured of that. And I'm sure that the public would want that. And I'm just like wondering where we can find space for that, to just be assured that those boxes are being checked and it's on our radar that our superintendent is, following protocols as indicated.
Can I just add about a different policy? The one that has just been the policy F21, policy on the use of restraint and seclusion. At the conclusion of that policy, there is the requirement for an annual report from the superintendent to the board, certainly with that policy. So it might be appropriate that this gets bundled with that. I'm not sure.
Well, personnel is confidential.
Right.
So. But we'll certainly report out on statistics.
I would think that's what Michelle was referring to. Michelle?
Yeah. Quite a few of our policies are just that, statistics and check. I think we have one on even, guns in the school. I think that was added to the policy when it went through to report back. And it's, I figured, of course, the board's going to know if something like that happened, but it's just a check and balance in place. So I would love to see the policy committee chew on that and think about how to work that in.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
Was there someone else?
Sherry Keith.
Sherry.
Hi, I also had a question about checks and balances. I'm very concerned about this because in the past, when information was given to administrators and the former superintendent, Lyle Holiday, about a teacher failing to report, there was no evidence of any action taken. What actions can be taken if there is a failure to report on the part of a teacher or administrator? Is it outlined in the policy, or is it more action that's taken within the school district?
Is there anything policy related that we can respond to?
No, I don't think so. No. So can I ask just, it would be very helpful if Michelle and Sherry, if you both could send me an email with those concerns, please.
We can talk about it more thoroughly at our policy meeting.
Yeah, we have our next meeting Monday, the 23rd of January at 2:30. So this will definitely come up. But for all of us on that committee, as well as the numerous community stakeholders who attend, it would be helpful if we could have that in writing, and that way I can just process it out to everybody.
May I ask for clarification from Sherry Keefe?
Sure.
Sherry's asking what happens if there's a complaint to the superintendent. The chain of command, of course, would be if nothing happens at that level, then it goes to the board. Is that what she's asking?
I thought she was asking what happens if people do not report as required by this policy.
Oh, I thought she was asking if somebody reports and nothing happens. Sherry, could you repeat your concern?
Well, I'm referring specifically, I think both needs to be addressed. Specifically, a complaint was made to Lyle Holiday about the auditorium being named after Robert Kramsky. The complaint was also made to Steve Perrin, and they took no action. This was prior to Kramsky, leaving the school. He was still employed by the district, and they were informed that he did not report information that was given to him, and they did nothing. They allowed him to continue to, get his accolades, name the auditorium after him. What can a public member do when you make a report and no action is taken? It seems like there needs to be some sort of policy to address this. Also, the fact that he was an employed educator at the time, and they were informed that he was given information and did not report. it seems like action should have been taken against his license also. So I think there's many facets to this. And my concern is when the sexual abuse investigation report is released, there are going to be many people who did not report. Some are currently employed by the school district. I think it's important to have some policies in place to what are you going to do about this? What remedial action will happen? What are the protocols? That is my concern, to have that in place, because I assure you that is going to come up.
Thank you for that clarification.
Deborah, is that something that you think will, you feel is addressed in or would be addressed in the policies that you are presenting today, or some other policies, or?
We are definitely going to open this up for discussion on January 23rd.
Okay.
On January, and it may mean that we're looking at a variety of policies to see what the checks and balances are. So that will happen on January 23rd. It's a J month. It's a J month. Yes. So thank you very much. And again, if you could follow up with these important points via email, that would be great. So I have two more points. The first is an alert that February 1st, 2023 is rapidly approaching, and this affects D7, volunteers and work study students. That was approved for readoption on November 8th, 2022. And this is the deadline for volunteers who drive students to an off-site school event to show intent by February 1st that they are going to go through the process of being fully vetted, meaning fingerprinted, and to show intent. And again, this is on page 2 of D7, which is on the website. Intent is by calling the district office and indicating that you have an appointment to be fingerprinted, and you will receive documentation from the district office that payment will be made by the district, and that you show an appointment to be fingerprinted. And then you may proceed as a volunteer with the full understanding that you are in the process of being fully vetted. So that's a policy that exists, and the deadline is February 1. So it's just an alert to get the word out there to all of your volunteers.
Happy to respond real quick, because we have established procedures in place at all of our schools to do that efficiently. Mark Anderson from the Windham County Sheriff's Department has collaborated with us. And maybe just Sean and Julianne, you could share your experience briefly with your school communities and how that worked.
Sure. Yeah, we've had about 15 to 20 parents who have gone through the fingerprinting process. So we worked with the Sheriff's Department and we identified a day that they blocked out about 4 hours of fingerprinting appointments for Putney Central parents. And a number of folks did it. And related, today we had our first winter sports day, and that is really only possible due to parent volunteer drivers. And so I really appreciate the time and energy and that was put into that policy, and it really gave us a lot of flexibility and leeway. Much appreciated.
Same. We had a great experience. Stacy Musso from Central Office met parents there at the sheriff's office to make sure they got the paperwork they needed. So we had 26 parents get fingerprinted. Wow. And we have parents driving for middle school basketball, and Thursday we'll have parents driving home. We only could get a bus one way to the mountain, so we're doing car transport from the mountain back to Dummerston.
Cool.
So,
yeah, I would like to kudos to Stacy Musso, who has been going to all of the school appointments, which tend to be in the evening, And, those have been after work hours, but she's dedicated to doing that and to meeting with all of these parents face to face. So it's been a nice process.
I have a question. I know Michelle has her hand up, but I'm going to ask a question just before, which is, I want to, I understand the need for a deadline, but I wanted to ask about if someone in the middle of February decided that it was in their schedule, their ability, their interest to volunteer. I don't want people to feel like they've missed the boat. So maybe they'll be the best volunteer we have. And so would it still be available? I mean, we don't want to encourage people to put it off until the last minute or whatnot, but I want to make sure that it's still out there that we can.
Yeah, our school offices would work with folks to make sure they have the paperwork, and we can help schedule an appointment at the sheriff's department.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Michelle?
Yeah, I really want to thank you, Deborah, for bringing up this reminder. And I'm going to just offer a little parental feedback. I am the last person, I think, that signed up to volunteer for winter sport driving because it's a commitment for 2 months. And I'm not fingerprinted because I wasn't able to attend the other thing. And I'm really grateful for that deadline, that it's about getting the process started. I just finally got my paperwork, but I've also let several people in my community know that they're not, what Kelly just said, basically, that they're not off the table. They didn't miss the boat. And I know, for example, I have a meeting this Thursday. So my husband's going to be able to take my spot and be the driver because I would just not be back in time. So I would just encourage to continue to do outreach and let people know that, if you want to get that ball rolling, do it by February in case something comes up, because drivers get sick and, it turns into a big headache. So just a little real life anecdotal feedback.
Thank you, Michelle.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Moving on, the fourth point it's been brought to my attention that the governor's decree regarding remote access to public meetings expires on January 15th, 2023. And I believe it is currently in the legislature to rework that date. The Policy and Amendment Committee has been asked to draft a policy that identifies this district's commitment to public engagement and the administrative responsibility to provide the infrastructure necessary to achieve that end. So again, it's about access to public meetings. For example, exactly what's happening in this space via Zoom, and whether we want to let that lapse or whether we are committed to full public engagement. So that is going to come up in the policy committee at some point soon. I do know that. So that is my final point this evening.
Okay.
Deborah, just let me say that should the policy include a formal appointment of an official Zoom keeper that could take my place, that would be fabulous.
Paul, can I recommend that you put that in an email to me? Thank you.
Okay, Liz?
Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that the state statute was for meetings that were only remote, not for a hybrid meeting. I could be mistaken, but that's what I thought I read. And the way that would affect us would obviously be some of the executive sessions which we're holding via Zoom. But I can check on that if you'd like.
That would be great, Liz. Thank you.
And maybe if you could share that communication with, in particular with Deborah as she's moving forward with the.
That would be great, Liz. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So if there's no one else on the policy review materials, we will move on to the administrative report.
Okay.
going to be fairly brief. We have some presentations tonight and of course a budget discussion. Give you an update on our work with Chris Overtree around panorama and climate work. He is actively scheduled with schools. He met with the Putney team last week, which included meeting with staff, leadership team, with students. I believe he even set up in the staff room for a period of time for anybody to meet with him. And all the other schools are essentially in the books for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So these meetings have been established. Referring back to, this board agenda calendar that we developed back in August, September. Just so happens that we had planned on this agenda that for the second meeting in February, which is the 28th of February, for a panorama climate update. So I've shared that date with Chris Overtree as a target date to come to a board meeting and to collaboratively present the work that we've been engaged in and kind of next steps. So I thought it was neat that that lined up really well with the work that we have scheduled with Chris. Again, I was going to reference the website and encourage feedback to Kelly and Carrie. My hope is that before the end of January, Kelly and Carrie and myself arrange a time with Paul and some other folks from central office, maybe principal representation as well. And we just review the feedback and see what we can do to respond to that feedback. We went through a process last Friday at our admin meeting where we dedicated a chunk of time, split into groups. Each group focused on a section of the webpage and then filled out a document of feedback for Paul. So it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, there's quite a bit of feedback and there's a process to kind of dig through that and see what we can do. And if we can't do something, explain the why behind that. So ongoing work. Tomorrow night at the SU meeting, we will be presenting on Act 173. So again, discussion around special ed funding, special ed spending, time study of special ed teachers, how all the work we've done around MLSS and EST has been proactive work to set us up for a successful 173 implementation. So Tate, Whitney, Joe, Brandy will be presenting tomorrow night. If you're able to tune in, either come to the meeting or on Zoom, I think it's going to be a lot of really great information. It will obviously be recorded as well through the Zoom. Let's see. John and Julianne mentioned winter sports are up and running this week in our elementary schools, which is exciting. We just need some snow, need a nice nor'easter here sooner or later so we can really have fun outdoors in the snow. And then again, just reference this board agenda calendar. Tonight we have presentation from some terrific social workers who are here to share the work that they are doing with our students, staff, families in our schools, as well as Rebecca Olmstead is here to talk about the work of the Well Act Committee and a wellness policy that is being drafted and will be shared at a future policy committee. So that's the update for, lastly, as you all know, Barb Nowakowski is retiring at the end of January. So we're just a few weeks away. Right before the holiday break, we concluded a search and an interview process, which included a couple of tests of creating a newsletter, crafting a communication. So it's a very thorough process. And in the end, the committee came to a unanimous decision, and Mo Hart, who's the current admin assistant at Green Street School, will take over as the executive assistant in February. We've set up a thorough transition because there's a big learning curve there. So Mo will start on January 23rd. She'll work side by side with Barb up until February 1st. And then Barb is off into retirement, which she's very excited about. And we'll continue to contract with Barb in a mentoring coaching capacity through the rest of the school year. So we all rely on Barb greatly in that position. So we're really carving out as thoughtful of an approach to support the transition as we can. So that's exciting news.
Excited for Barb.
Yeah.
Not for us.
We're happy to welcome Mo.
The second week in February, will that be a summary of, will Chris have completed his climate survey by then? Is it going to be a summary report?
We haven't really worked with Chris on what that presentation will look like, but I think it will be, I would think it would be a review of the actual data, a review of the process taken with each of the schools, and then a highlighting of goals and next steps. It could be similar to that process.
And currently, are parents and guardians included in the survey?
We will be conducting a parent climate survey beginning of February.
When the annual parent survey mid-year.
And lastly, I'm sure that Chris is doing all he can. The challenge, of course, in doing any survey is to engage those disenfranchised students who don't typically participate. Can you speak to any novel ways that he's connecting with those students?
Essentially, when he's doing school visits, that includes meeting with students at each of the schools. So I don't know, John, if you can speak to the process you took at Putney.
Yeah, so Chris and I collaboratively made his agenda for his time there. And he carved out about, he spent, the better part of a day there, and roughly half of that time was connecting with students. Some of that was our student leadership team, which, to your point, Tim, is not necessarily truly representative of the whole student body, as you mentioned. And so he spent time visiting classrooms and talking to students in other capacities too. And again, it was sort of him who dictated what that agenda looked like, with the goal of getting a sort of full picture of the school community. Yeah, that's what that looked like. Yeah.
Jackie did have her hand up.
Okay, are you, okay, Jackie, did you have something you wanted to share, or a question or comment?
Well, I thought better about my comment because I was so emotional about it, but I guess I should say that I'm very thrilled to hear about Mo Hart moving into Barb's job. But as a Green Street parent, I'm also super sad about it. But it's very exciting for the district. Those of you that haven't worked with her are going to be really thrilled. She's just amazing. That's all.
Wonderful to hear that. Thank you. Well, if you have nothing else and there are no other questions on the admin report, I think we will move on to the budget discussions.
Very good.
Kelly.
Yes.
Kate Margaitis.
Could we
Mark,
pass this?
I have my counselor to bring forward for approval tonight.
Yes, I think that's a little later in the.
Is that later? Okay.
Yeah, yep. That's under new business, Kate. I have that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for keeping us on our toes.
Okay, so I can do a kind of a second review of our budget draft that we discussed last
meeting on December 20th. I'll share my screen. And give you an overview, and we have presenters, so try not to take too much of their time here, but obviously a very important process. So what I have sent out earlier today and thought I would review is an estimated tax impact of the proposed budget, and then also the capital plan. We went into a pretty detailed discussion at the Finance Committee, so I'll just do a summary of what we discussed, but please, committee members, feel free to share anything in addition that you might. As a very quick reminder, this document here, you might recognize the graph. This is on our website. This is the summary document that identifies the major categories of spending. Most of it is in direct instruction, as you might expect. Here's our 62.9 million in spending as a proposed budget, up 3.2%. And then you may recall in this document that this is the one that you had on December 20th, and I do have a couple extra hard copies if folks would like. Don't forget that we have some enrollment data and then summaries by school here. So these would be the single page summary of spending by school, just so it's, sort of easily absorbed. So this is page 11 of that summary document that you have. Here's the Academy School, just as a reminder. This is what we went over last meeting. Okay, so each school has a page summarizes spending. So the update to this package is the estimated tax liability. So this is the placeholder page that you had last meeting, and I distributed this single document this evening as the update that I was able to do just today. So that's the document I thought we would go over. And by the way, we spent a little time on the detailed document. Remember, this is also on the website. This document supports the summary document. So if you want details on individual line items, here's the 200-page budget document also on the website. And I do have a couple of extra copies if folks would like that. And here is the topic for this evening. There we go. So there's 4 statistics that we need from the Agency of Education to develop an estimated tax rate. It's the yield number, which is this first figure right here. It's equalized students. So that's our kids with assigned weighting that theoretically distributes resources across the state. And then we needed the CLA statistics as well. And then, of course, we bring this number here, the 62,944,000. That's the 4th, critical statistic when we are calculating a tax rate. So there has been no changes to the draft, although I would like to summarize some of the feedback that we've gotten for a second draft at our next meeting. But at a glance, just to get right to the proposed tax rate associated with the $62 million proposed budget, the equalized tax rate is down 6% or $1.51. And if you look across the line here, so I'm on Zoom and I'm just reviewing this single page document that you have. You see that this tax rate is below the rates that were there several years ago. This first column is fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22 is $1.71.9. The prior year, which would be in terms of budget, but which would be the current year we're in, $1.61. And this one is $1.51. So we don't see these kinds of statistics very often. And it all starts with what the tax commissioners shared with us December 1st, and we reported and discussed last meeting. This number here, 15,479. That's what's called a yield number. That's all public schools in the state of Vermont use that number. That's the denominator in the equation that calculates the tax rate. So as this number gets bigger, our tax rate gets smaller. And the reason for that is the same dollar in the new property tax, the property value landscape across the state raises a lot more this year in this proposed budget than it did last year. And that has to do with, Guilford homes that sold for $800,000, but they were only tax assessed at $350,000. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately, you'll see when we get to the CLA, takes a big bite out of this benefit that we see from the yield. So even though our budget's up 3%, you see the 62,944,000 up 3%. Our student population is relatively flat. You see the equalized statistics here on this line 15, 2,206 students relative to 2,215 students. And these would be our resident students, doesn't include our tuition students. Relatively flat statistic, which pushes our cost per student up. When spending is up, but enrollment doesn't go up by the same amount, cost per student goes up by a greater degree. But we compare our number here, which is 51 million divided by 2,200 students, 23,000 per student. We compare that number to the yield number, the 15,000. And 23,000 is 150% larger. It's 150% of the yield number. You just move the decimal over a couple of ways, and there's your tax rate, $1.51. However, when we look at the CLA, so now our proposal leaves the realm of what we can control in terms of spending. And now the town select board are required by the school funding law to apply the CLA statistic to our tax rate. So we give them $1.51, that's down 6%. And the CLA adjustments translate those tax rates into these figures at the bottom of the page. So for Brattleboro, because the CLA has dropped 6%, it sort of consumes that lower equalized rate, and the Brattleboro tax rate with this proposed budget would be about even. It was $1.74 this year. This proposal is $1.74 next year. It's essentially the same tax rate. Guilford CLA, or property values, increased at a more rapid pace than the change that Brattleboro saw this past year. And the property values changed by this 8.5% you see on the upside, which means the tax rate, the $1.51, has to be raised through this formula to $1.62, or up 2.4% there, if you're looking at the bottom block of numbers. To calculate these numbers, it's very simple. You just take our board proposal, $1.51, and you divide it by the town CLA. And that produces these tax figures. So unfortunately in Guilford, very dramatic deviation from a tax assessed values in this last real estate market. Guilford went from a 93% CLA, common level of appraisal, down to 81%. That means that the Guilford tax assessment on the town's record is discounting properties about 20%, 19% relative to what the market was recorded in terms of the sale. That gets to what I was just saying as an example. If you had a house that was tax assessed for 300,000, but it sold for 400,000, that's a 25% deviation. And so the equalization formula across the state says that if Guilford hasn't assessed their value at market, then we're going to raise the tax rate so that it's the equivalent as Dummerston, which has just recently done a tax appraisal. And that's the theoretical way there's equity across the state in paying into the education fund. So obviously that's quite an increase in Guilford, but I understand the Guilford Select Board are looking at a reappraisal, which hopefully will be completed before July, which may allow for a lower tax impact. And then Putney is sort of in between Dummerston and Guilford. It's still a significant difference in the CLA, up 11%. See, that's the last number in the CLA block. And because their property values have deviated so much from tax assessed value in terms of real estate sales, the tax rate goes from $1.72 to $1.82, up 6%. So there's quite a range of an impact, but ultimately we have no control over the real estate market, and the board budget on an equalized basis, where everybody starts from, is down 6%, $1.51. So that's quite favorable relative to a typical year. Any questions on that? I did want to review the capital plan briefly as well. Any questions or suggestions? I did want to mention that we don't have any adjustments. Kelly did forward some correspondence regarding potential addition to the draft budget. On a net basis, it looked to me like it'd be about $32,000 of additional money to professional fees. So that would increase these numbers a little bit. But I know that Julianne and I have to catch up on an adjustment that actually is a lower figure that we would be making along with the Career Center. The Career Center, we're waiting for final statistics on average daily membership, which creates a $1 million journal entry that does affect our budget depending on the final number that we get. The BUHS entity, as you see it in this set of books, has to pay the Career Center, even though we're the same entity. It's the state's funding formula. So that is to be determined. So I know I will have some adjustments for our next meeting, and I will integrate them and recalculate these summaries. But if there are no other requests, we'll move on to the capital plan. Oh, yes.
Just going to ask about the spending cap. I think that's been rescinded for this next year. Isn't that right?
That has been rescinded through 2029, fiscal year 29. Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All part of the weighting change has not been implemented, but as part of anticipating a weighting change and knowing the effects of the pandemic on public schools, the legislature essentially suspended the spending threshold penalty through 2029. Okay, moving right along. I had included a summary of the capital plan on that December 20 document. And here again is an update. I had sent the summary out to you today, and we do now have the full 26-page capital plan proposal, which I also just handed out to you as a hard copy. So this is on the website as well. again, just very briefly, highlights, on a summary level, you see we have two categories. It's the same $3.6 million FY24 proposal for improvements. One is infrastructure format. Okay, that's the top data set. And on that same first page, the second data set is the sites. Where is the 3.6 million being spent? The top is saying that we're improving our heating and ventilation systems. You see fire protection, lighting, roof systems, and so on. The bottom is which school sites are being addressed in the improvement plan. Another statistic you might notice is in the middle of the page down here, $10 million is the total if we cumulated the fiscal year 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27, that 5-year period. I often provide that statistic just as a little bit of a longer range view. As far as funding the improvements, this operating budget that I just reviewed with the $1.51 tax rate includes $1.7 million as part of an appropriation for capital projects. And it also includes $750,000 that I believe I will be able to secure with Paul's help and a few other folks, ESSER funding through this agency of state agency of education. You might also note how significant we have been able to utilize these federal resources in the last 3 years. You see fiscal year 22, 1.7 million of ESSER money for capital projects. The current year, 2 million and 750. So that's over 4 million in resources, which will have value to this community for 15 to 20 years. Takes a tremendous amount of work for the application process, review, procurement, audit, and so on. But we've been successful in getting a lot of really good improvements done. So there's our summary of our capital plan. Typically, we do have a board vote on the projects. And right at the top of the page, you see, I've got the project subject to board approval. Once the board does approve these projects, I typically go forward with the engineering studies, develop specifications, create a timeline for bidding. And then if it's more than a $500,000 project, you may recall we have to go through a pre-qualification process. The board has to approve vendors and then only those vendors bid. We do have at least one project, the Oak Grove heat pump project that would likely be over 500. I'm sure it will be over 500,000. So we can go over that maybe in another meeting. I think our next meeting is primarily budget. So maybe a little more time to discuss the individual improvements, but you have the data there if you have questions that you might have an interest in. Our student asked about Django, about the Natowich Field, just because that was mentioned. Here it is on the Zoom, or did I lose my, lost my Zoom? That's fine. It's page 5 in the capital plan. Is where we have had a placeholder on the Natowich Field, 175,000 for improvements to be identified. So it is part of the plan.
Can I just ask, the 175,000? You just said it's for improvements to be identified. So it's in effect for studies and assessments?
Yeah, it's been on hold since the board revisited the idea of a turf field. Yeah, so we know that we need more than 175 if we want to, say, restore the sod. So yes, it's getting us part way there. It's understanding the degree of renovation, the cost, and but it's not enough to get us all the way.
Thank you.
There's a note there about Gale Associates. Are we still spending money for Gale Associate consultation? Good.
So I'm glad to address any other questions. And certainly address more in detail at our next meeting. Ron?
I'm just noticing on the overview part, it doesn't list BAMs or WRCC. Are those like included in the BUHS
Yes.
plan?
Yeah.
And I also had another question about that BUHS plan includes an item about sidewalks. Is there any plan to put sidewalks on the part of, I think it's Atwood Street that does not have any sidewalks for kids that are walking from Fairview back to WRCC and BAMs?
No, I don't. I know we do have sidewalks that exist that we are maintaining them, but I have not heard. You're looking at page 5 here. I have not heard. You see, here's the description of those improvements. And I have not heard folks at the high school ask for that improvement, but or maybe Nancy knows something about it.
A little bit. So the section that does not have a sidewalk is not school-owned property. So we can't put a sidewalk in as a school. It would have to be the town, I believe, and they would have to go through a process of gaining approval to either narrow the street or take property along the side of the street to put in the sidewalk.
I believe the town has the authority to make improvements that they see fit within 25 feet of the center line of the road. So I don't know if they actually need permission from the homeowners to do that, but I'm sure there's some sort of process with.
No, it says, I think they have to go through an Act 250 type approval process, not a
area.
It's not something, I mean, I personally, as the Career Center director, would like them to put a speed bump or 2 or 3 in on Atwood Street, but that
I know that just
plowing and
like bringing
everything
my kid
else.
to school, there is, especially when there's snow and that encroaches even further into the road, that there's like kids basically like walking alongside of your car. And
yes,
my own kid walks home from school and I'm sure they're experiencing the other side of that on the way home.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm not saying it's a good situation. I'm just saying that unfortunately it's not property that we have any control over.
That's a select board meeting topic.
But I'd also like there to be just something done about the speed in which some people drive on the street, and some of those people may or may not be students or staff.
All right. Yeah. Each one of these pages is by site, just so you know, with a header at the top of the page. And this plan is this, all that detail is the same information that adds up to these 3.6 million.
Can I just add a comment about this? So we had attempted to get approval from the AOE to update the baseball grandstand to modernize it to include an outdoor learning space. And that's something that the high school has really, teachers have been asking for. And it was denied by the AOE. But I just would encourage the board, not in this budget, but looking forward to think about supporting, different initiatives such as outdoor learning spaces.
Sure.
I think that's important.
Very.
That's all I have for tonight, unless there are any other questions.
Any other questions from anyone here or online? in regards to the budget? No hands? So it looks like the next thing is the board expenses, discussion, possible action. I know that Frank needs these numbers, and so we should be mindful of that. But I did send to the board a list of suggested amounts. And I think, Tim, did you want to speak to that? Did you want to speak to that?
I haven't got it, but okay, thanks. The current budget, has it allocated money expenditures for legal fees and professional services?
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Yep, there's 103,000 on the board line item.
I think we're going to need a whole lot more than that. Well, maybe not a whole lot more, maybe 135, but what else? Yeah, we're asking.
So can I ask, so that expenditure for legal fees, where is that located? Sorry.
So, yeah, can we do a share again, Paul?
That would be great.
All righty. So legal, so we would want to go to the to either the summary document or the detailed document. And probably the quickest way to get to a very specific answer on a line item is our detailed document. So it's this one here I have on the screen, and it's the one, if you picked up a hard copy, Deborah, it's the big one. And we'll want to go to the 3096. So what I'm doing here as I scroll down here, I'm looking over here at the site numbers, and the board is in 3096 district wide. So toward the end of the document, there's also a page number in the summary. So maybe I'll even use that and see if I can speed it out. So page 18 of the summary document has got the board proposal, and that's going to tell us what page the board is on. Did you see it, Paul?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, it's on page 18, and there's a line item that says school board, and the total budget is 237,000, and it's on page 174. So now I'm going to go to page 174 in this document, and we can look at the detail of the board budget. So we're in what's called the district wide. So these are all programs that serve, all grade levels, all schools. There's the transportation section, communication, and then we have board right here. Along with summer school. I am also having to go through the grant section of the budget as well. Okay, so yeah, page 173, 174. It's on the bottom of page, actually 173. And so if you're on that page, or if you're looking at the screen, you see legal services right here, 103,000. It's essentially level funded. We spent 28,000. I'm sorry, we had a budget of 28,000. We spent 96,000 in the most recent fiscal year. That would be the year ending in June. And we budgeted 103 for this period, and we've budgeted 103 again for the upcoming FY24 budget. As you can see, I've basically just copied, as we discussed last meeting, the current year budget. But there you are with the board recorder, 15,000, board stipend, 75,000, with some benefits that are statutory for the Social Security benefit. And then there's professional fees, 103, advertising, 4,500, printing, 14,200, some supplies for 6,000. The dues and fees really could be repurposed for you. I think Tim had in the email something, a reference to maybe some stipends, because that used to be the VSBA dues, and now that's paid through the SU budget, based on the way the VSBA operates. So there's your proposal that's in this draft. 237,000, it's up 13,000 from the prior year.
So just to follow up on my question, legal services, legal fees, that is embedded in other professional services, and other professional services is only legal.
No, it could be also any consultant that the board hires, any professional service. Yeah. Could be a Chris Overtree. Yeah.
Okay, so it's.
Well, okay, then I asked, the board hasn't approved it yet. You know, relatively small sums like $3,000 for the Student Affairs Council, $3,000 for professional development for the board. What's the process here? Do we have to make a motion to get it approved by the board, or do we just send you our recommendation?
If we want to change the draft budget, I think that would be the best process, is to just make a motion to amend the budget. And I will have other changes as well. Most of my changes will be lower. It will be reducing costs. As I said, like for the Career Center, I suspect we're going to see a lower enrollment number than what we had as a initial number. That will lower tuition expense in the high school. So
if we warn it for the next meeting for the board to approve.
Well, we do have possible action, but can we do it for the next meeting? I mean,
it would be helpful to have a figure either now or let's say a week before the next meeting, just because it does take time to recalculate all of the, the tax pages, the revenue page. Whenever you change an expense number, it changes all of the other assumptions on the source of funds.
So I have another question about this page. Where it says school board, it's the second item. Last year it was 72,000, now it's 75,104. But that looks as if it's for the stipends.
That's right.
So why has it increased?
It should reflect what was voted out on the article. So the article that was approved, it would have been Australian ballot last year. Mm-hmm. And I think it was pretty similar, wasn't it?
I thought it was for 72,000.
Well, it's by position, right?
So 10 of us.
Yeah. And it's
9.
7,000 times 9 plus 9,000 for one.
Yeah, so it should be 72.
Yeah. There's probably either a clerk figure in there. I can easily look that up.
You mean the note taker?
The note taker is above. Yeah.
So
there is an additional $3,000 stipend, and if you don't recognize it, I can definitely look up the detail on that.
Just want to point one thing out, which it appears that we have an increase in the board recorder, and my understanding is that's because she is now recording the finance committee and Policy. So I just wanted that to be clear, unless I'm mistaken.
No, you're correct. Yeah.
So I'm still confused about the board stipend and what that 3,000 for.
Let me tell you what that assumption is.
No,
It's half, right? Shouldn't it, it's half of what the, what was approved as a raise, right?
Yeah, so what it is it's, as you said, 7,000 for each member, 9,000 for the chair, okay? And then I see that there is the difference is where finance committee recorder was charged. So we should probably move that out of the board section and put it under recorder.
Okay, all right.
okay.
Right.
So Kelly?
Yeah.
Well, may I make a motion to, for the board to approve increase in legal and professional services from, what'd you say, 103,000 to 135,000, and also to approve $3,000 for student advisory committee meals and stipends, and third, $3,000 for professional development for board training.
Okay, so Tim has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So Tim has made the motion. Deborah has seconded. Is there a discussion?
Two hands
Madam
up,
Chair.
David from previously and Wendy.
Okay, Wendy, is it related to what we're talking about for clarification?
Yeah, that was a lot of information at once. I would like Mr. Maciel to email me his motion, please.
I'm sure he can do that.
Yeah, sooner rather than later so I can get these minutes drafted. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, Michelle?
Yeah, Tim, I'm sure you have hashed out some numbers. Thank you. And I definitely support a stipend for our students, reps, and board training. I guess I'm wondering, what is the thought process on increasing the legal? I mean, I understand we have unknown legal expenses that are ongoing, but I'm just wondering why we don't want to go with, I guess maybe I'm thinking about how did Frank come up with his estimate? Is it based on a full year with the investigation under the way? And how are we determining, that it's necessary to probably, create a cushion and add another $30,000 to it?
So yeah, I didn't come up with the number. This would be the number the board came up with last year for themselves.
The 103,000?
The 103, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the 90, I think it was 97 or something that you had said was what we had done. What, can you repeat that time period? Was that from?
That would be the 12 months ending in June of 2022. The most recent June. Mm-hmm.
So June until, do we know what our year-to-date spending is then? Is that what I'm hearing?
Year to date, I can look that up too.
Can I just ask a general question? This is not just about the school board budget, but in general, when a lot of these things, we're making an educated guess about how much money we think we'll need for certain things. And then where does the money come from when we end up spending more than that amount?
If there's a deficit in one line item, often there's an offsetting surplus in another. But if there's not, then we go to fund balance. So I don't know if you have the summary document, Robin, but yeah, if you do, let me just show you on where fund balance is. So that's on page 5, this document of the summary, and there we see that we have a 3,319,000 fund balance. So that helps us avoid an insolvency in that instance. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion, Kelly?
Sure.
I just know we have some folks here who wanted to present. And I know our next meeting is totally focused on the budget.
Well, if, so we have a motion, it's been seconded. We are at the point where we're discussing it. So Frank had indicated that he would rather have them now rather than later. I'm not sure if we don't, if Tim was willing to withdraw his motion based on the board members sending me some feedback and then me forwarding it to you.
No, I'd rather have a vote now.
Okay, all right. Is there any other discussion before we vote?
Well, I'm just waiting for an answer to my question still. Sorry, I'm just
About legal, about legal.
where that extra.
The
how
answer
we're
is
coming up with that.
99,000. Yeah.
We spent 99,000
The answer is 99,000. Yeah.
Okay, so
year to date.
Today.
So Frank, in your professional opinion, does it I mean, it does maybe seem indicated that we have a higher amount than $103,000. So does that seem like a reasonable amount to you? I'd appreciate your feedback.
Well, I really would have to defer to the board. I haven't been involved in any of the negotiations or discussions, so I really have no insight on the topic.
And Michelle, it wasn't done very scientifically, but it's just based on discussions that we really can't make public about legal matters.
Sure, it's certainly ongoing. I understand that. So that's okay. That's fine. I feel satisfied with this, just having a little conversation.
Third question.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was 135,000 for professional services, 3,000 for stipends, or I'm sorry, 3,000 for meals and stipends, and 3,000 for the professional development for the board. Yes.
Yeah, this, I think it's very interesting that it would come up now. The budget has been developed since November. And I don't know, I kind of wish that it was, this was brought up earlier. Is all these papers, all the work that all the administrators have done. And then just, I mean, it happens quite a bit. I would prefer to have it done earlier.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I will say that I had earlier asked members of the board to forward me figures so that I could get them to Frank. And I got one response from one board member. And then there was a further request, and that's where we are now. So it's unfortunate. And I think it's unfortunate that the budget season, though we don't control it, but it comes at a time sometimes where holidays and school vacations, and ordinarily we would have had our meeting on the 27th if we were following the regular schedule, but we had it on the 20th because of budget considerations and also vacations and stuff. So I think that put us a little bit off, but I appreciate that. And that's always better to have things done sooner rather than later. And maybe we will try to be mindful of that in the future for any other issues. Thank you. Michelle.
Yep. Just one more thing, just to, I guess, to add to what Sean's point that he just said was, is that if our amounts are off, as we saw with that first year where we suddenly had $70,000 extra in legal expenses, we do have reserve funding and the money is available. It's not like we have to, forego services. Am I correct in stating that, Frank?
That's correct.
So changing the numbers doesn't necessarily, disempower us from not being able to have those funds down the road.
Thank you, Michelle. I know David had been waiting to speak. David can have a 1-minute comment or question, then we're going to move on to the vote.
Thanks, Kelly. I'll wait. I just want to point out that if the finance committee has been looking at the budget for a long time, but the board got a first look at it 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of unrealistic to ask for things to not come up at the end because the board doesn't see it until the end.
Okay, thank you. So now we will move on to Tim's motion. Motion to for $135,000 for professional services, $3,000 for meals and stipends, and $3,000 for the professional development for the board. All those in favor of including those in the budget, please signify by saying aye.
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 And any opposed or abstentions?
I'll oppose.
You're opposed. Okay. So it looks like we will now need to do a roll call. So all those in favor, please raise your hand. That's Tim and Deborah and Anne and Robin and
Liz and Emily and Michelle.
eight, nine. What are we missing?
Lana.
Okay. And yes, I believe Lana is not online. So, and then Sean is abstaining.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, you are objecting. Okay. Okay. So those figures, the motion has passed and those figures will go into the budget. And I just want to just clarify one thing as we move forward. If for some reason we have a great year and we don't have to use those funds, what happens to them?
Just rolls into the fund balance.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so now we are moving on from that to. Okay, it is, goodness, we do a 5-minute break. And be back here at 7:50. So I'm going to sit here and not move. So at 7:50, we're going to start back up. I'm calling the meeting back to order at 7:51. Thank you, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful break, as short it was. So now we will, we have some presentations.
Excuse me, the sound has not been restored.
Missed that, sorry.
Thanks.
What? We missed what you said.
You just said thanks.
Thanks.
Before that.
Just generally.
So now we have some presentations, and my apologies again to the presenters for making you sit through the, next time we'll try to get you in. And then you can choose to stay for the meeting.
Thanks for the opportunity. We see this opportunity as a way to share. As you know, last year we made quite an investment in clinicians and social workers and how important to invest in the social emotional learning of our students is a priority. So tonight's an opportunity to share the work that is being done in our various schools. I'm going to have Paul do some introductions, and then we'll get to hear about the great work that's happening in our various schools.
I'll start by saying, knowing how board meetings work, I've asked the presenters to only speak for 5 minutes tops each one, so that we can sort of cover the ground that we need to efficiently. We've asked a number of different social workers, family outreach engagement coordinators to present, to sort of provide a sense of the range of the work that's being done in the district. And when they will each sort of, those presenting will each sort of give you a slice of what they do. But what we did want to do is initially talk about, we hope that you will see that in the process of this very short presentation, the following things are true. The effects of pandemic are ongoing and are long-term, specifically in terms of student engagement and student mental health and well-being. That's a message I think we need to keep saying and understanding, that while we aren't necessarily all of us wearing masks anymore, there are still long-lasting effects. And I hope you get a sense of what those are with respect to student engagement and student mental health needs. Mental health supports for youth are at a premium in this region. I think they're at a premium in a bunch of regions, but it's certainly true here. And so we're really seeing social workers, engagement coordinators as frontline in dealing with some of the effects, because some of those resources really aren't necessarily there. And then finally, I hope you will see that a flexible school-based response is preferred in order to respond to individual school needs. Each of the presenters will show you kind of a different slice on the work that they do. It's embedded in the needs of the school. And if you don't hear from all of the social workers, engagement coordinators, at least you get a sense of how it fits with each school. And so I think we've agreed on a sequence. It might not be the sequence. In fact, it won't be the sequence that's in the slides, but for each of them, actually, I'm going to go ahead. And it sounds like Sean Quinn, who is the school-based clinician and school social worker at Vernon, will be presenting first. Is that correct, Sean? And are you online?
I am online and I can go first.
Okay, fire away.
All right. Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for having myself and the other social workers who are there with you today. So as said, my name is Sean Quinn. I'm the clinical social worker at Vernon Elementary School. It's my second year in the district. Last year, I was working at Oak Grove School, Guilford School, and Vernon School as well. And my role as a social worker is really interesting in the schools because it has melded a clinical and educational gap, kind of combining the two fields. So one of the main things I do is provide clinical therapy to students who need it to benefit for their own mental health. That's determined either by teachers or family members in consultation with myself, contacting me, speaking with me, as well as with the school counselor. I also provide social emotional lessons to grades kindergarten through 4th, between teaching empathy skills or how to self-regulate, how to utilize diffusion skills when having big feelings, as we put them in the elementary school level. I also support social emotional learning with staff to help them come up with curriculum as necessary. I'm an active member of the PBIS committee. I am involved with the Kids Talk or EST teams, student support team, and really work with the school community to help build a structure in the schools that students can learn more effectively. You know, anyone who is dealing with really profound or even minor mental health issues can impact our brains, can impact how we learn. And when students are feeling heard, feeling safe, and feeling supported, they are more likely to better learn. And my goal has been to assist students in achieving that, in assisting families, in connecting to resources in the community, whether that be referrals to local community agencies, to doctors, pediatricians, you know, finding clothing as needed or anything that's needed like that as well. And then more recently, also providing some conflict management as well, teaching students how to handle conflict between themselves, providing structures and assistance to staff trying to manage conflict between students, whether a scuffle at recess or a disagreement about who gets to hold the next stuffed animal. You know, learning these skills at an early age can really provide the longitudinal support later in life for students. Laying the foundation now lets them build upon it in life. And in general, something that I think is a constant need is really providing that social emotional support, providing that therapeutic support, teaching those skills so that teachers can increase what they already do, which is provide such a supportive structure and environment for these students. And then working within the community, you know, in Vernon, it's a little removed. We're part of the district, not, you know, and in ways and some in not some in others, but really linking that community in Vernon to the community in Brattleboro, to the community in large in Vermont, and then trying to coordinate services between the school in Vernon, between Vernon community, and between all the wonderful resources that are in Brattleboro. So that's kind of a quick view of all the things I do at Vernon Elementary School.
Great, thanks, Sean. I think probably what we'll do is maybe have the presentations, and then if there are questions at the end, we can support those. I think Seth, you're up. Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us here tonight. Really appreciate it. A lot of what Sean was talking about also applies. You know, a lot of that's, you know, the same stuff I do. I work at Oak Grove Elementary halftime, and then the rest of the time at Dummerston. And one of the things that I noticed is, you know, even between those two buildings, you know, what I do at Dummerston versus Oak Grove is even different based on, you know, the different school needs. One of the common threads has been, though, is, you know, when students are in crisis, you know, with this, I'm not just meaning just upset. I'm, you know, kind of what I'm speaking to is there's more maybe kind of more escalated behaviors because they're experiencing those kind of challenges in both of those locations. You know, a lot of times that's when, you know, I might be in supporting or as part of the team, I'm working with these individuals. like with Sean, I'm doing a lot of, I do a lot of individual clinical work. I do groups. Some of them, they have a little bit of a different spin, and a lot of that's probably based on some of my background. So some of mine, I do a lot of, some of the groups that are more social, emotional oriented, teaching emotional self-regulation skills, but also I do things that are more just basic social skills, communication. And one of the things that I've been able to roll into are things which are like challenge groups, which have, it's like smaller version of like ropes courses where there's some sort of experiential component and the students are learning, self-control, self-regulation, communication, teamwork through some of these activities. Oh, and on top of that, I don't know. I work just like Sean did too. I work on, a number of the different teams. I work on the educational support team, tier 2 team. I think at Oak Grove's called SST, so the student support team. But with these teams, the whole point of them is to find some of the students who are having experience, whether it's academic, or, social or emotional challenges, and make sure that we're, kind of providing them whatever they're, what it is that they need. That might look very different for different students. Might have one student who, doesn't have any issues, throughout the day, but maybe they experience some, loss or trauma. Something that's more, kind of something that has happened. Or, it could be something for students who are more, maybe have more kind of internal kind of challenges with self-regulation, and maybe they need to plan a little more comprehensive to really help them thrive, but also to ensure safety and to, ensure that the classrooms are able to, still teach and function properly, and hopefully progress that student to, as time goes on, needing less and less and less of our support. At Dummerston, we're kind of tinkering around, putting together a team that, that's, what our focus is. And it's amazing. One of the things, that I've told people is, if a job gets boring, I tend to look for a new one. My job is not boring. Every single a child, or teenager that I end up working with and supporting, it's I'm learning about them. They're teaching us about them, and we're, finding ways to really support them and just to help them grow and thrive and be successful in our schools. So, I don't know. I kind of went off script a little bit there, but I think I will leave it with that. Thank you very much.
Great.
Alexander, who's gonna go next? I'm lost track. Sherry. Okay.
So my name is Sherry Mustang. I'm newer to the district and so grateful to be here in Vermont, not from far away, but in Massachusetts. And I was hired at the Oak Grove School is a Title I school. So I was hired as a family engagement and education coordinator. And so I'm kind of doing a lot of that and quite a bit also with the students. So I'm fortunate enough to have my LICSW so I can play a clinical role as well. I work with the families. If we were to look at tier 1, I work with everybody. I offer support to anybody who needs help. So maybe attendance is an issue. I can work with mom or dad or caregiver or grandparent, whomever the guardian is. I'm making sure the child comes to school, or what's going on, what's maybe stopping them from getting to school. So I can play that role. I can help out with the Harvest Festival and get the families engaged and get the families to be part of a tighter community, which increases learning, of course, which is what the premise of the Title I funding is for. And then I do all sorts of other things. We have the backpack program where we make sure all students have enough food. I work with families that aren't always very trusting with other teachers or administrative faculty at times. So I've kind of built better bonds, or not better, but I've built, apology for saying better. I've built bonds with some of the parents just because I'm able to maybe go into their home, have a conversation with them, kind of let them hear their story and understand where they're coming from, what they may need, what support they may need in order to get the food they need, the shelter they need, their student to school, helping with peer relationships, helping them to get to bed on time. You wouldn't believe that some of the things that may seem like, I don't understand why this child's doing this. Well, if you go into the home, you might understand a little bit more. So I can do that, and I'm grateful that I'm able to do that. I'm honored that they let me in their homes when they do.
Folks need to be at a level of vulnerability and trust to have you go into the home. So that's
You're exactly
really special
right.
thing.
To build that rapport is really not only important, but it's quite beautiful. We had a student that had some trouble in school, and they were trying to call the parents and couldn't. And I just gave her a little text, hey, Leah, we need you. Had her on the phone, got her to the principal, and was able to help with the problem. That was just because I built that rapport. So you're absolutely right. I offer anything else when stuff's not there for that crisis intervention, so then I am. And then whatever else the team needs. And I also went off script, but I wanted to share that family engagement piece and how important that is in the kid.
And I just want to add, I don't know about Oak Grove, but I know at the high school, we have many families that somewhere throughout the years, they have encountered some sort of negative experience with somebody that they view as an authority figure, whether it be an outside agency. So when you said you felt bad using the word better, I totally get it, that they have to feel safe to connect with you. And as much as as an administrator, I want families to feel safe with me, I recognize that in my role, they may never. So I just want to
thank you.
Echo that and sort of, I get what you're saying.
Thanks.
Alexander.
It's almost my bedtime, so I'm going to stay on script. When I tell people what I do for work, their eyes often get big and they say, I don't know how you do it, which means I'm not doing a good job of explaining my role, because I really think I have the best job in the world. I love it. So I'm going to try to do a better job here tonight of explaining my role and my enthusiasm for it. I'm one of 2 clinical social workers on the WHS counseling team. The other social worker is, of course, the legendary Linda Heimerdinger, who provides therapy to her caseload of students, whereas my services are largely drop-in based. Both approaches are needed and highly utilized. She and I work closely with our amazing SAP counselor, Ricky Davidson, the whole counseling team, the nurses, the teachers. We work with administration, but we're also a tight little crew. In my role, I advocate for the needs of students who are having a difficult time engaging with their education. I do this in part by providing mental health counseling and coaching, an alternative workspace, and problem solving within the school setting and in the greater community, with the goal of creating equity and better student outcomes. Here are a few examples of what I do from the past week. I helped a family fix an ongoing issue with their health insurance. I supported a parent in initiating the 504 process for their child, and I completed several safety assessments. But mostly right now, I'm spending my time providing coaching around executive functioning skills and direct communication skills as our incredible students head into finals. Additionally, I'm part of the student support team, which is where I get the majority of my referrals. Officially, I have a caseload of 26 students, but unofficially, that number is closer to 40. And on average, 35 students sign in and out of my space per day. My space is only closed for 20 minutes, and I oversee 3 full block study halls. I'm open for 2 lunch periods, and I host an ACE period each day. There is truly never a dull moment. In terms of ongoing needs, I think we could really use more support, and I don't really know what this looks like, but in advocating for the needs of youth in our greater community outside of school, including greater access to high quality mental health care, substance abuse treatment in particular, and housing, and more. Because of the lack of strong community partners at times, it makes supporting students in school all the more challenging. And while I think, number 2, while I think we already do a lot of this, I think there's even still a need for more professional development for our amazing teachers to foster their ability to engage students who are struggling for various reasons within the classroom. And finally, we'd love more social workers. If I could clone Linda and Ricky, no doubt, I would do it immediately. What they offer is beyond description. And then that's an image just of my space, and that's a few more images of why students work with me, in their words, and why they feel so comfortable in this space when they've really struggled in other areas of the building. and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Alexander. We had included one other presenter, Doreen Burt from the middle school. She was not able to attend, but I think if you look through the list of pieces that she's involved in, it's a similar picture for the middle school. We wanted to try and provide you with elementary, middle, and high school examples. Member of the student support team, assistant connecting families, provide individual and group counseling, respond to student social emotional behavioral needs, et cetera. I see them on here. And then in terms of ongoing student support needs, she's providing some statistics about that deal with that question of student mental health and issues with student mental health. Some call it a student mental health or a youth mental health crisis that we do need to address. I will open it up. Looks like Seth has.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say one more thing. As I kind of got on my roll there, there's one of the things that I didn't say is, you know, in terms of like some of my observations of working with some of the different groups, watching them, you know, on the playground as I, you know, support, you know, provide support out there, you know, in the classroom. One of the things that has seemed is some of those, like the communication, self-regulation, and social skills, it just seems that they are kind of behind. You know, like watching, you know, sometimes watching students play, they're playing games that, you know, sixth graders might be playing something that you're more used to seeing maybe a fourth or a fifth grader do. And just, I mean, they just need a lot of support in this area. And, you know, I guess when, you know, part of my hope is, you know, through providing some of these things that are going to boost those skills and just, you know, really help them just really kind of start to bridge some of that gap of some of that time they missed while they were, you know, out and virtual. So
You used an example of a 2-year time period.
yeah, a year or two, yeah.
Do you think that it's, I mean, is this pandemic related or stuff and pandemic related? I mean, are you?
I think it's both. And I think each student, each family, even each community was differentially affected by, affected by the pandemic. You know, I just moved here from Michigan and things were happening there that weren't here and vice versa. But I think it's different, and some students are just much more significantly affected by it, and others maybe, you know, for whatever reason, weren't family strengths, other access to other resources. But I mean, we all know that, you know, and when resources are scarce, when things happen, you know, things can be a lot tougher. So, but yeah. So, you know, again, I just hope through some of my work, I'm able to, bridge some of that gap, and, you know, like everybody is here, you hear 3 people, you know, talking who really love their jobs, and, you know, I'm excited to show up every day. And again, you know, this is my first year here, but I'm just very excited to be here. So anyway, thank you.
Michelle.
Yeah, I thank you guys for hanging in there tonight, and I appreciate hearing about what you guys do. I'm just curious. I realized everyone's answer was gonna, I'm sure, be a bit different, but I'm wondering how often you have students or families initiate working with you guys, and if there's any kind of outreach provided so that they even know that that's an option, that they can reach out and see if you guys are, you know, helpful.
We can't get them out of our office.
The students or the parents.
Yeah.
More so for me, more so the students are looking to come and get support, because we have these small groups teaching in these different skills that they don't necessarily have. I mean, having a group of 4 kids today playing a game, and the conversations and what you naturally learn when you were a child and you were outside playing and give and take and sharing, not necessarily even sharing, just general rules of getting along, or they just don't have that skill set right now. And so we have to teach that, and we teach that through play, and then it's intended to go back into the classroom and learn it in the classroom as well. So that's the hope.
Well, that's what we see.
You can go.
I would say I'm trying to run through my caseload in my head, but I think it's about 25% of my caseload is self-identified. Like they've found me, or I've found them in the hallways at a hard moment. And it's turned out there's much more going on, and they have sort of, we've developed a relationship that's become what it is through a smaller moment or through a friend. Friends will bring a friend who already know me, and that child may be feeling like they're outside their window of tolerance. So and it may be higher than that, but I think it's about 25%. I don't have any students I can think of who were identified by their parent. No, there's one. But anyway, at the high school level, it's typically coming from teachers are making the referrals, their counselors, the nurses. It's coming from folks within the building or the students themselves.
Yeah. Sean has a hand.
Sean.
Yeah, I'd just like to answer that question as well. I know at the elementary school, I'd say it's probably about 50-50 between either faculty or staff who have identified, hey, this student's really struggling. Maybe you could work with them. And then parents as well who have reached out, who have either heard about me through the newsletters that I send out a little article in at the start of every school year, through word of mouth from other parents or other students who say, oh yeah, there's this quirky social worker at Vernon, maybe he can help and work with your kid. So it's a pretty mixed bag of referrals that come in, and I certainly go out of my way to let teachers know I'm available if parents have questions, if stuff comes up at parent-teacher conferences. I'm there as well, just to kind of answer questions or field whatever may be necessary to help them get that social, emotional, or mental health treatment they might need.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really glad that you're part of our system.
Liz has a question.
Oh, Liz?
First of all, I want to thank you so much for sticking with us, because our schools can't succeed if we don't address student needs. But the other thing I wanted to mention was that trust factor with families who have had negative encounters with public schools, it takes a special person to be able to go into somebody's home who has been in trouble with the law or whatever, and make a bond with them. I found that during when I collaborated with Head Start and Early Head Start. And I found that at the larger Putney meetings that also included the preschool at the school, that the parents gravitated to me. I think just because I could talk in plain English, like they would present something to these parents, and the parents they come out of there and they're like going, what the hell what happened there? What did they say? What were they talking about? And I could just easily talk to them. And that trust, I mean, what they'll tell you once they trust you is phenomenal. And it's so effective for the children. But again, many thanks for all the work you're doing.
All right.
Thank you so much for
Julian?
Yeah, I just want to say this is our second year at Demerson of having social work support. And so this year it feels like we've been able to deepen the work. And just circling it back to our previous conversations around the educational support team process, we've talked a lot about both in our behavior support team at Demerson and then teaching teams and admin teams, like if you have an EST and you're looking at the goals, like an EST should be all goal driven for that particular student, individual goals. And so a social emotional goal, really articulating that clearly. What is it? And then what's the plan? What is the intervention for that student? And working with Seth, he plays a role at Demerson School where we have pre-K to 8. So we have this vast span of really being able to support the team and articulating, here's what with the teacher, with the team, with the parents, here's the goal that we can really identify. And then here are some, set plans and interventions. And then here's how we can monitor them. And some of those interventions include working with, doing some coaching with families as well around these skills that these students are learning. And some of the kindergartners Seth has worked with this year, like they will tell you what their goal, like they know day to day, like I'm working on this. This is how, this is what this tool is for. I'm working on this skill. I've gotten better at this. And building that sense of confidence and competence is just really, what we're about. So it's been a great model for us and great to have Seth's leadership.
And then I think John can.
Just kind of piggyback on what Juliana said, it's also proving that this is working. Like I can identify at least 5 to 10 students off the top of my head that last year when I started were struggling very poorly. One of them came up to me the other day and said, guess what? I think I figured out a way to graduate early next year. And that is a student that you probably know who I'm talking about, has spent a lot of time with me last year in the position of dean, and also a lot of time with Allie. And it was just about that student finding what works for them within the school. So I think, and again, tying this into budget, like when we're looking at ESSER funding going away, when we're looking at building the budget, we have to support the things that are working as we're looking at like the needs of our students and how different they are now.
Thank you. And John?
Hi, I just want to mention that, excuse me for just a moment. I have a phone call.
Alexander, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, really quickly. Something that both of what you just said reminded me is the importance of the piece around longevity in this work. I see at the high school level, and I can only imagine in the younger years, most of what I do is attachment-based work, and there's a lot of attachment wounds. And the difference, even I've only been here a year and a half, between going from being like a punishment for kids to come see me, which was not what I wanted, to feeling like kids were like are excited and look forward to it. And it's like an important part is it comes through longevity. And so I think that piece is really just important to keep in mind that as we move forward, like keep us where we are, because it really over time, the impact I've made this year is much more significant than the impact I was able to make last year, just because I've been here longer.
Looks like John is back.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. I'm in the unique position that as both the principal at Guilford Central School and the interim principal at Oak Grove School for the last few months, that I've worked with Seth and Sherry at Oak Grove, and I had the pleasure of working with Sean last year when he was part-time at Guilford. And this year I have a full-time social worker, Leanne Suksan. And I just want to commend the professionalism of these people. I've seen how effective they have been with working with students and with families. And they are incredibly dedicated and skilled professionals that are helping our children and our families in regards to building trust in school, with schools, with engagement in school and in learning, and in building functional skills that allow children to not only prosper in the school setting, but also in the home setting. So I just want to say I've had this unique opportunity to work with some of the people that you have heard from tonight, and I can attest to their skill, dedication, and professionalism.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Okay. So I want to thank Sean and Seth and Sherry and Alexandra and all the staff who are doing the good work that you're doing. So thank you very much. And thank you for hanging in there with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
You don't have to stay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Reminds me of
I'm sorry. Good night.
That's what I thought.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on.
All right. So you all know Rebecca Olmstead. She's been to a few meetings this year. Rebecca is our nurse leader for the district. So she works with all of the nurses in all of our schools. She also heads up our WellAct committee. And she's here to talk a bit about some collaboration that has been ongoing to develop a wellness policy, which we will be presenting at a future policy committee meeting as well. Once a year, we're to present to the board updates on wellness policy. So Rebecca's here to share that. So I'll turn it over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks. So just a little history about before COVID, pre-COVID, we nurses would meet during a few in-service days. So that would usually be a couple of days in the fall and then towards the end of the year. And so maybe we might meet like 3 times a year. We'd see each other face to face and meet at BUHS. And obviously during COVID, that has changed. And even those 3 meetings, one of them usually was taken up by CPR training, BLS. So post-COVID and into COVID, we've met on a weekly basis. We have hours of professional development, and we also, prior to COVID, we had the WellAct committee, which is the local wellness team. It's made up of school nurses, some SAPs, some prevention people, Cassandra and Rolf at ADAP and VAPC, sorry, mixing up my health department days. And also some of the counselors at the schools, and also some engagement social workers this year as well. And so we've started those meetings back up, and we meet once a month on the first Wednesday of the month. And what we've done, and we've met since October, we've divided into subcommittees. So you can see that there's like a wide range of support staff. So some people in prevention, school nurses with clinical backgrounds. And so we divided up into subcommittees. And one of the subcommittees, we looked at the wellness policy, the wellness and nutrition policy. It was made up of nurses and nutrition people. And we have revisited the policy. We updated some of the language, and we have some goals moving forward, like whether or not we have a robust staff wellness portion in the district, and whether or not we want to expand on that and make it a separate section of the wellness policy, renewing recommendations, and where we're getting feedback. And in the community, we've gotten so much support, and we met twice, pretty much since Thanksgiving. We met twice a week to review the policy. I've met with Kelly DeRocha, the PE teacher at BUHS, to look at the physical activity recommendations and the PE standards in the policy. And then also Erin Robinson, just regarding the health education piece. And so a lot of work has been done. And so we have looked at like the goals moving forward. And so obviously you guys will get more information on that when the policy is reviewed.
Shared the draft. Yeah.
Yep.
They're working.
Great. And then also moving on to the buy-in, how the recommendations are going to go out into the district. And that is where, is Ally West on?
She had to go.
She had to go. Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. So, and the buy-in is really like, okay, so we're putting forward all this guidance and recommendations. And prior to COVID, and then, or during COVID, we had all these restrictions about basically you couldn't bring any food from home. And so looking again, what is healthy foods and making those recommendations to teach health and wellness and to, kind of not just talk the talk, but walk the walk as teachers, as educators, looking at wellness in the curriculum, health teaching in the curriculum. So, Ally would have a lot more to talk about just as far as, like the recommendations in the wellness policy about fundraisers, it's probably moving away from like Krispy Kreme donut fundraisers into something like more of a farm to family kind of situation, and not using food as an incentive or as a punishment. So, if the classroom, let's say they meet all their goals for the week, they get extra time at the recess yard instead of they get a cookie party or like they get cake or something, something that's healthy that increases activity.
Sean Murphy, I'm so glad to hear what you're saying. Because one of the things I've noticed when I go through the warrants is that they're just item after item after item that is all sugar-based. And, it's both the staff and the students. So I think a change in that would be so rewarding. So thank you so much for putting that in sort of in the forefront of what you do.
So again, it's the policy development and the procedures that follow the policy,
right,
and ensuring that we're actively engaged as a community and following those recommendations.
This is a long-standing issue. I remember when I was on the BUHS board, the District 6 board, there was a lot of movement to try to not have tables filled with donuts at the beginning of the year. And there was definitely sort of a push on that, but I think it sort of waned over the years. So to have it come again, I think is so important.
Right. During COVID, then once we got through a lot of these hard times, we have to revisit this stuff, it's because we know that, health and wellness is better health outcomes, better learners.
And this is, you must communicate with all the nurses within the district.
Yes.
So nutrition is really right up there in terms of a very important.
It's a key part of health promotion and disease prevention.
So one item going forward is recommendations from this policy will have an impact on the RFP that's going out for the food service contract for the next time around. Ally has announced that she's not going to be available. We can hope that whoever the successful bidder has will have a similar high quality individual supporting our nutrition programs across the district. And a note that our expectations for nutrition are above minimum standards for the nutrition, federal nutrition guidelines. Michelle has a question, also Liz.
Michelle.
Yeah, I thank you, Rebecca. First of all, I'm really appreciate hearing how overlapped everything is and how you tap into everything and work with all of the different departments and what a collaborative effort it is. I mean, that's really, really impressive. And I just it's fascinating to me because our family moved back to Vermont because this is what we see in the schools already where we excel, and to be turning that up a notch and being that much aware. And my experience, again, I'll do the anecdotal parent stuff, but to have your children in a school where they're encouraged to have their water bottles and, and to have those reward system where they're leaving and to have their nurse know that their nurse cares about them. It's really, it's the whole energy of our school system. It's excellent. It's, prioritizing our kids to thrive. And I'm really excited to see how this continues to develop. So thank you.
Yeah, the WELAC meetings, I've heard from people who might join us. I send out tons of invites and they might say, oh, well, I didn't stay on too long because it seemed really nursey. It seemed kind of, really clinical. Say, no, your opinion, it's so needed. Because someone might read a policy that we've presented or something that we're looking at or collaboration, and they might say like, oh, well, I don't really understand that piece of it. We want to know that because that likely is what the family's experiencing when they are looking for us as a resource.
Sure, if you mentioned it, Rebecca, but also in terms of membership on the WELAC committee, I believe we also have folks from Food Connects.
Yes.
And Farm to School Initiative.
Yes, they've been just vital.
Yeah.
Liz?
Yeah, I think, one of the advantages of Putney's food program is that they can try new recipes and then they adjust them for, kids will say, oh, that one was too spicy. They get the feedback from the kids and then they can adjust how they're making something. And I think that's been a huge benefit to the kids in Putney. And there's also far less food waste. But just having that ability to tweak things so the kids will eat it, I think that makes a huge difference.
Thank you, Liz. Any other comments, questions? Okay.
Rebecca. Yeah,
Thank you for being in there with us. Looks like we move on to the retirements and resignations. Unfortunately, this is the sad part of the evening.
So we have 3 retirements. Lorraine Bramble and Susan Johnson from Green Street School and Steve Rice from BUHS.
Rain, what was the last name?
Bramble.
Bramble. And she and Susan Johnson were from,
Green Street School.
and they are retiring.
They're retiring. And Steve Rice from BUHS is retiring.
After how many decades?
Oh, boy.
27 years.
How many?
27.
27. Wow.
27 years.
All 3 of them have been in our district for over 2 decades.
Well, is there a motion to accept with regret Lorraine Bramble and Susan Johnson from Green Street School and Steve Rice from BUHS, their resignations? Oh, I'm sorry, their retirements.
So moved.
Thank you, Anne. Is there a second?
Again.
Thank you, Robin. So all those in favor of
The board.
accepting the retirements of the people listed,
Next step.
please signify by saying aye.
Budget
Aye.
development.
Recording in progress.
We just lost it.
Okay, so with regret, that motion has been approved.
2 new hires to propose. Michael Kell as a school counselor for Green Street School and Christine Pereira as a BAMS academic support teacher.
Michael Kell, he is, what was his position?
School counselor,
School counsel. And Christine Pereira, you said was a,
BAM's academic support teacher.
I don't write fast enough. Is there a motion to approve the new hire of Michael Kell, the school counselor of, I'm sorry, you said BYU?
Green Street School.
Green Street School. Green Street School, my apologies. And Christine Pereira, the BAM's academic support.
So moved.
Thank you, Deborah. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Anne. All those in favor of the new hires, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. So then the scheduling of the final restorative process training, I did send the board out an email asking, do we want to schedule that fourth one? Do we not want to schedule it? I have dates I can send you running through probably February. I will say, I need to know like ASAP if people want to continue. I don't know if we want to vote on that or if people want to just.
I'd like to continue. I'd like to continue to have a final session with Mel Motel.
And I wrote to you already. I'm for it. Fourth session.
Okay.
I agree. Mel has a lot to offer us.
Yes.
Okay, so is there someone who would like to make a motion to, or do we need to, we don't need a motion to.
No, because we already
We've
did.
already done it. Okay, all right. So then I will just send out those dates and if people can just get back to me like within the next day or two, so I can secure a date from Mel. Or it appears that her time coming up is getting pretty busy. So let's do it and get it done.
It would help if you had more lights on.
Okay. So if there's nothing else on that, we will move to the executive sessions. We have two very brief. I'm hoping they're about 5 minutes apiece. There will be, is no action anticipated to be taken. So I did email the board about one of them, and the other one is a similar situation. So is there, I can't bring up my wording. Is there a motion to find that? I don't have my wording. I was not, pardon me, it'll take me just another second. It's not it.
While you're doing that, can I ask a question of Mark?
Please do.
Okay, Rebecca presented E11, Child Nutrition Act Wellness Policy. Did she present the policy as it exists for the district at this point, or are
They're going to be proposing a policy.
which is very different from this?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And that's an SU policy, right?
Not huge.
There will be some changes to that.
Okay, and so when it's presented to the policy committee, is it possible to like highlight where the significant differences are?
Yep.
Thank you. Great.
That's not an SU policy.
Oh,
Could be.
oh, because of,
It's a great question. There are a number of overlaps of politics. I think it is would sit best as a policy.
You could go through the SD policy committee and then supported by the SU
Love that idea. You do the work, Deborah.
Wait a minute. I want to know what policies exist for the SU. Thank you.
Whatever policies you would like us to look at.
The committee has been expanded.
We can do it.
Okay, so is there a motion to find that premature general public knowledge would clearly place the public body or person involved at a substantial disadvantage with and please note that a separate motion would be made to discuss the two matters under 1 VSA 313A1A contracts. Is there a motion for the finding?
So made.
Thank you, Tim. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Anne. All those in favor of making that finding, please signify by saying aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
just a question for discussion. Sorry, what is the contract? Is it personnel or something? I'm just curious what the finding is.
It's the contracts. It's to discuss I sent you an email earlier and there's one, it's a similar situation.
Thank you for reminding.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's that's all I needed to hear
Okay,
that.
thank you very much. So did
Thank
we
you.
vote? Did we, can we redo the vote that there's all those in favor of making the finding, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstained? Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to enter executive session under 1 VSA 313A1A contracts?
So moved.
Thank you. Anne, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Robin. All those in favor of entering executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions?